Were you inspired by the ancients who used music as a bridge to the divine and a way to awaken peace within us?
Music is a powerful tool in that regard. St. Augustine, 1700 years ago said that when we sing, we pray twice. So there's something about the heart opening through music or through singing and prayer, especially when prayer and music are combined. That is a very powerful opener. It opens our hearts and brings us into the experience. So music and prayer for me have always been very much together.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Ask Julie Ryan Show. It's where we blend spirituality and practicality to help you live a life of purpose and joy. What if sound itself could open a doorway to peace? My guest, James Twyman, the Peace Troubadour, has brought sacred music into some of the world's most dangerous places, armed only with a guitar and a prayer. An Anglican Franciscan priest and founder of Namaste Village in Mexico, James is also a New York Times bestselling author of 19 books, the producer of 7 feature films, and the creator of 22 music CDs. Join me as I ask James to share stories of courage and spirit, showing us how music connects us to the divine and awakens peace in our souls. Please remember to subscribe, leave a comment, and share this episode with your family and friends. Now, let's go talk with James. James, welcome to the show. I'm so delighted you could join us in the middle of your evening in Europe. Tell everybody where you are.
Thank you, Julie. I'm in The Hague in Holland. I'm at a conference. I just left Assisi, Italy. I was there for about a month, and now I'm here at a wonderful gathering. So if you hear background noise or anything else, it's just part of the cost of doing the job in a hotel.
Well, I understand. Absolutely. So let's just get right into it. How does one person's commitment to peace ripple outward into the collective?
Oh, goodness. Well, it's a big question, and it reminds me of something that Margaret Mead said. I'm sure you've heard this quote when she said, "Never think that a small group of dedicated people can't change the world. In fact, it's the only thing that ever has." And we're often conditioned to think, well, what can I do? What can the people that I know do? And the truth is, that is what usually and almost always is what gets the ball rolling and gets us moving in the right direction. People who, like us, who are committed to peace, people like us who are committed to change. And we have to embody it ourselves, obviously, first. We can't be expecting other people to do what we're not choosing to do. So it's always a very personal decision to be peaceful, to be friendly, to be willing to depolarize the judgments that I have, the way that I reject other people because of their beliefs or whatever it may be. So yes, I think each one of us is called to play a role. And that's one of the reasons why we're trying to start a movement of people who are willing to dedicate themselves to be depolarizing agents at a time when that's so needed.
Well, and like what I would assume is one of your favorite patron Saint Francis, who said, "Make me an instrument of your peace."
He didn't actually.
He didn't?
No, he did
That's
not.
that's a
That prayer,
falsity?
it is unfortunately that
Really?
prayer, often called the prayer of Saint Francis, is certainly attributed to Francis. But I'll tell you, as a Franciscan, he did not actually write that prayer. No one knows who did actually. It
Wow.
showed up at the end of the 1800s on a prayer card. There was a picture of Saint Francis on one side, and on the other it said a simple prayer. And because there was that picture of Francis, it became associated with him. But I always feel like I'm telling people that telling a kid that there's no Santa Claus when I tell them that Francis did not write that prayer. However, he did write one of the most beautiful and important prayers in history, which is called the Canticle of the Creatures. That's the real prayer of St. Francis. And it was the first thing that was written and published in what we now know as the Italian language. And it was 800 years ago this year that prayer was written. So though he did not write, "Make me an instrument of your peace," he did write a beautiful prayer where he praised all the creatures of God for their holiness and for their important role. So sorry to break that to you.
No, I know how journalists feel now, James. I feel like I've got a breaking story here on the news that St. Francis really didn't write that prayer. And I'm sure he helped inspire it. Let's give him credit for that.
Oh, sure. I mean, I think the prayer really does capture Francis. It sounds like something he would say, "Make me an instrument of your peace." What I always say is that an instrument cannot play itself. An instrument has to surrender in order to be played by the master musician. And that's Francis. He was one of the most important characters of his time. He changed the world. And it was because of his willingness to surrender and to become an instrument of peace.
Well, I got to tell you that as a kid, I played the flute to that song in the choir loft of the Catholic Church where I went to school in my
Oh,
parish
I
church.
learned
And
how to play guitar playing that song.
I played that song so many times at funerals and at all kinds of different masses. So, yeah, I know it well. You are such an underachiever. My goodness. And in the intro, I talked about, all of your accomplishments. Was there a defining moment, James, that set you on this path of bringing peace to the world?
Absolutely. Uh, what happened was a friend of mine who's actually here in this hotel right now in Holland gave me a sheet of paper. It's amazing that a sheet of paper could change the course of your life. This sheet of paper had 12 peace prayers from each of the 12 major religions. So the Hindu prayer of peace, the Buddhist prayer of peace, and on and on. And these were prayers, St. Francis correlation, these were prayers that were prayed in Assisi in 1986 when Pope John Paul II called the leaders of the different religions of the world together to pray together from their tradition. So the Dalai Lama was there for the Buddhist and on and on. Sorry about the noise in the background. And and so a friend of mine, my friend Vicky, who's here in the hotel right now, several years later gave me that sheet of paper that had those 12 peace prayers on them. As I began to read each one, I heard music and I just picked up my guitar. I don't know what they're doing in the background here. I picked up my guitar and began to play along. And within 1 hour, I had put all 12 of those prayers to music. It was like a miracle. And I decided that from that point on, I was the peace troubadour and that I would travel the world as a penniless troubadour like Francis, sharing those prayers. So, yeah, it was just that sheet of paper that launched the whole thing.
When those prayers were downloaded into your head and you combined them with music, can you tell us about that process? Was it just you knew it, the music was in your head and you played it? Did you sound it out? Was it how
Yeah.
did spirit communicate to you that music and how to transpose those prayers into those different songs?
Well, it was a miracle, and I felt the impact of that miracle. It was an incredible situation, and I could feel that something had changed in my life, and that my life was never going to be the same. And it was so true. I began traveling around the world to countries that were experiencing great conflict and great wars, and beginning in Bosnia and Croatia. Sorry, I'm trying to get away from all the noise here. And it changed my life. And here I am 30 years later, still doing that work.
Goodness. What'd your life look like before you embraced this mission?
Well, gosh, it was 30 years ago. And in fact, I was just looking back when I was in Assisi last week. It was 30 years ago that month that I first came on my way to Croatia and Bosnia during the war there to perform the peace concert in refugee camps and peace gatherings during the Balkan conflict. And before that, I always felt and knew that I was being called to something, though I couldn't define what that something was. And so when my friend gave me that sheet of paper that had the peace prayers on them, it was like the tumblers fell into place. And I could feel that this is what I'd been waiting for, and this is what I felt moving in my direction. And I have to say, I never looked back. From that moment on, I knew this is what I was called to do. I didn't know what it would look like. I literally thought that I would be like St. Francis and just traveling as a penniless troubadour. And that would have been fine. But then I wrote my first book, Emissary of Light, based on my experiences there in Bosnia and Croatia. And it began to change when that book came out. But I still go back to that feeling of just wanting to be a peace troubadour and to share these beautiful prayers, because every time I've been in a country where conflicts and wars were raging, sharing those peace prayers, you could feel that there was an essence at the core of all of them, that really makes a difference when we join together, we pray together, we hold that vibration together. I think it's not only a powerful force, I believe it's the most powerful force in the universe.
And there's lots of ways to pray, aren't there?
There sure are.
It's not just reciting a prayer that's been memorized. It's off the cuff, it's meditation, it's just focused on the same thing. What's your definition of prayer?
Well, prayer for me, more than anything, is a feeling. It's an energy, and it's like an energetic commitment to something that I know to be true. I know that peace is prevailing in this country. I know and I feel that things are going to shift in a new direction that reflect that peace. And the more I can generate that feeling into my life, into my mind, into my heart, and in doing that in union with other people especially, then it changed it just from words into an actual experience, something that almost as if it has wings. I've had the experience in many situations where we have had millions of people praying. For example, the first time I was in Baghdad at the invitation of Saddam Hussein, back in 1998. We had millions of people who were stopping what they were doing and praying and sending their prayers of peace to that dramatic situation. And we could feel it shift right in front of our eyes. Something was happening that was not logical. And I really do believe, as I said, that this type of positive prayer is the most powerful force in the universe.
Did you come from a spiritual family? Tell us about that. Tell us about your growing up years and your family, and also tell us about your vocation. Where were you? Did you always know you were gonna do this kind of
I think I
work, or
did. Yeah.
you did?
I was raised in a
Really?
very Catholic family. I
Uh-huh.
always had this deep admiration of St. Francis. He was always there for me. I remember I chose Francis as my confirmation name. When you're Catholic, you have to choose a new
Right.
name when you're confirmed. And even though I didn't really know a whole lot about him at that time, I could feel uh, the importance of his life 800 years ago. And therefore, I was in a public school at that time, but I just figured I was supposed to be a priest. So right out of high school, I moved to Chicago to enter the Franciscan order. I wasn't there for more than a couple of years because I figured I had to really experience some life before I made that decision. But about 5 years ago, I came back and I joined an Episcopal group of Franciscans. And I feel like I finally have been able to live that life that so inspired me when I was a young child. I always say that once Francis gets his hooks in you, he never lets go, and that's very true in my life.
Do you attract animals like Francis did?
Um, Sometimes, yeah,
Like, if you're sitting out in the lawn somewhere, are the like, all the squirrels and chipmunks and all those birds gathering around you?
that is the Francis most people know for sure.
Right,
Francis
right.
and the animals. Even people who don't know who St. Francis of Assisi is have probably seen hundreds of statues of Francis in bird baths. Uh, And though that was a part of his charism, it wasn't a very big part of it. He was much more intense than that. He changed the world. Let me give you one example. He decided that he could end the Crusades if he traveled all the way to Egypt and just sat down and had a conversation with the Sultan al-Kamil, who was the leader of the entire Islamic force. And he did. He and one of his brothers traveled all the way to the fortress of Damietta, which is where the battle was taking place. And somehow he found his way into the fortress and was able to sit down with the leader of the entire Islamic world. And this sultan was so moved by the courage and the simplicity of this strange little man that he let them stay with them for 2 weeks, and really felt changed by Francis's presence. In fact, I'll tell you what happened next. Uh, Not very many people know this part of the story. The Sultan did make an offer of peace, but the cardinal, whose name was Pelagius, who was in charge of the Christian force, refused. So the battle continued. A short while later, the Crusaders were moving toward the Nile River. If they were able to cross the Nile, the war would be over. They would be able to easily make their way to the Holy Land. So what happened was the Sultan, when the Crusaders had come to a low area by the Nile, he opened up the floodgates and completely flooded the area where the entire army was sitting. They couldn't move, they couldn't leave, they were starving, they were getting very sick. And if the Sultan had wanted to, he could have very easily sent his soldiers in and just demolish the whole Christian army. But he didn't do that. And I think it was because of his meeting with Francis. Instead of doing that, he sent his soldiers in to feed the soldiers. In other words, he out-Christianed the Christians. And what are you going to do then? The Christians, when they were finally able to leave, the army went back to Europe because it's hard to fight the enemy who just saved your life. So that's the kind of impact that Francis had that a lot of people are not aware of.
I have full body goosebumps on that story. I've never heard it before. And I'm thinking, what an emissary that guy was, for heaven's sakes. Goodness. What are you holding in your hand?
It's a rosary.
The rosary. Okay.
I always like to have a bead and a rosary beads in my hand.
For those of you that are listening and not watching, I could tell that you had some form of beads in your hand. I say the rosary every morning. I have for many, many, many years. Yeah, I do every morning. And it's interesting to me. A dear friend and her husband founded an organization called the Way of the Rose, and they've got, I don't know, 40 or 50,000 people globally that say the rosary together. And many of them are not religious at all. Some of them are non-Christians. Certainly a lot of them are not Catholic or Episcopal.
Wow.
And it's just such an ancient prayer. Tell us about the rosary and tell us about why you would choose a rosary to hang on to.
Well, a lot of it goes back to my own childhood. I was raised in a very Catholic family, as I mentioned, and I always had a very deep love for Mary, the Mother of Jesus. And when you're Catholic, as you know, that means to learn how to pray the rosary. And for me, it was a lot more than just rote prayers. I could feel her, the energy of just giving my life in service and using Mary as an example was a very powerful experience. So I would pray my rosary like you every day. And though I got off that habit, uh, it still just resonates very deeply with me. So usually what I do now is I the goal, as you know, is to pray without ceasing. In other words, to always be in a state of openness and receptivity, right? And so if I'm talking to someone like we are now, I'll find that my fingers are going over the beads, which is I'm praying without having to say any words because the intention is that every bead is a prayer. Or if I'm not talking to someone, maybe I'll just have a word like love or God or whatever that I just like a mantra say in my mind as my fingers go over the beads. But it's just a way of staying in communion with the divine, trying to continue amping up that experience of love, which is, I think, what we all need to do if we want to be peacemakers.
She's one of my main spirit guides. The Virgin Mary is. And she always appears to me, James, like she looks in the statues, white veil, powder blue, gown thing. Her hands are outstretched, which just cracks me up.
I'll show you something that I've never once shown anyone on an interview or a podcast. You're going to get an exclusive. But the first tattoo I ever got was a tattoo of Mary on my shoulder.
White veil and the blue outfit, you guys that are listening and not watching. Oh, that's hilarious. I know, because that's how we were taught she looks. And the interesting thing about the prayer beads is they are ancient. They way predate Christianity. And there's something about the tactile feeling of the beads, regardless of what culture or religion.
Most major religions have some form of prayer bead, whether it be malas in the Hindu religion, or the Muslims have their prayer beads, and many religions have them because there's something, like you said, tactile about just moving through and being conscious of that union that we share.
I agree. Let's change directions for a couple of minutes. Were you inspired by the ancients who used music as a bridge to the divine and a way to awaken peace within us?
Well, music is a powerful tool in that regard. Saint Augustine, 1700 years ago, said that when we sing, we pray twice. So there's something about the heart opening through music or through singing and prayer, especially when prayer and music are combined. That is a very powerful opener. It opens our hearts and brings us into the experience. So that's why I've always been a musician. And like you, being raised as a young Catholic, I learned how to play guitar because back then the folk mass
Oh,
was
yeah, yeah.
was big. Yeah, they brought guitars into the church, and I wanted to play up there, so I learned how to play guitar, singing the prayer of Saint Francis and all the other songs. And music and prayer for me have always been very much together. I don't think I ever would have made a very good pop star, but I'm a pretty good peace troubadour.
I always think about I had Father Sean O'Lara on the show several years ago, and he's an Irish priest who is retired now, but his grandfather was a druid and his grandmother was a mystic, and he was raised by them. And he brought up something that's always stayed with me, James, and I'd love your take on this. And I think it goes along with the music. Like St. Augustine said, you pray twice if you're singing. He said, if you look at the old fashioned Gothic cathedrals and basilicas around the world, they were all designed to raise our vibrational level to help us get in the frequency of spirit, of the Holy Spirit, of God, of whatever, to communicate with spirit. He said you got the Gothic architecture and the acoustics for the music that appeal to you. You've got the audible, the music, the solfeggio frequencies, the Gregorian chants, all of that, and the other organ music, the pipe organs, are amazing. You've got the stained glass for the visuals. You've got the incense for the olfactory. And all of these different sensations were designed to put us in a frequency to help us commune with spirit easier. And I think that goes along with what you're talking about with music is similar to praying twice, according to St. Augustine.
Well, you could say that architecture is another form of music. It's music in form. And whether it be the stained glass windows, whether it be the architecture, the domes themselves, the resonance of the music, that when we're in a sacred place like that, it lifts us. It takes us out of the ordinary and brings us deeper into the extraordinary, a spiritual sense. And we can talk all we want about the appropriateness of that, whether, the hundreds of millions of dollars that go into a church, we could say, well, maybe we should feed the poor. And you can make an argument about that. But to have a beautiful cathedral or basilica, I mean, I was just in Assisi where The town is filled with some of the most beautiful churches and basilicas in the whole world. The Basilica of Santa Francesco, the Basilica of Santa Chiara. They're amazing. And whenever I'm in those places, they lift, I feel that lift. Francis would have hated it. St. Francis would have hated the fact that they built a basilica in his name. In fact, what they did was Francis used to say, I just want to be buried in this particular pit on the outskirts of town where they would bury the people who they did not know, they did not have families, that maybe they were criminals. That's where Francis wanted to be buried. So what they did was they bought that land and built one of the most amazing Gothic cathedrals or basilicas in the world. And they hid him in there. We did not know where Francis was buried exactly until the 1800s. He was hidden inside the basilicas because they were so afraid of other towns coming in and stealing his remains. But it is a remarkable basilica. Some of the most beautiful paintings in the world are in it. So, however you look at it, it's meant to lift us into an extraordinary experience. And one more comment that you triggered in my mind, learning how to play guitar and the music in church. I just got a text from the priest who taught me how to play guitar,
Oh,
Father Vincent Ferraro, who's now in Buffalo, New York. And he was just telling me how proud he is to know that someone that he taught when I was only 12 years old how to play guitar has done something with that. So shout out to Father Vince and everything he meant to me when I was young.
going back to the peace theme, there's so many kinds of peace: inner peace, family peace, community peace, global peace. Do the same rituals influence all of them?
Do the same rituals influence all? Well, I would say more than anything, we could just say the ritual of love
Okay.
obviously influence everyone. And there's an old Stevie Wonder song, and the words are, "Love's in need of love today." St. Francis also once said, "Why is love not loved?" And this is a challenge that we're all facing, especially in our country. Why is love not loved? We live in one of the most polarized times in our history, and where the pandemic of being right is more important than the simple kindness and decency and just respect. These things seem to have disappeared so often in the conversations that we have. If someone agrees with me about something, especially politically, that's okay. They're fine. But if they disagree, they have a different opinion, voted for a different candidate, whatever it may be, so often now they're pushed away. I don't want to talk to you. Our country was based on, number one, the fact that we are all made in the image of the divine. And if that's true, then whether we agree or not, I'm still going to respect you and honor you as that. But if I take the divine part out of that, and you disagree with me, then you're no longer deserving of any respect. That seems to be the point that we have come to, where God has been taken out, often in the name of God. Now, that's a hard and weird thing to say. God has been taken out in the name of God, right? As a priest, one of the things that is distressing to me is when people proclaim to be a Christian but do the exact opposite of what they're called to do by Christ. And because what we're called to do is to love one another. That was one of the, sorry, I'm getting so spiritual here, but
Ah,
his one commandment was love one another like I have loved you, without
yeah.
condition. To
Yeah.
love your enemies, do good to those who hate you, bless those who curse you. And yet we seem to have given up. So I'm going to make an announcement now, Julie, that this is going to be the first time I'm going to talk about this on air. Uh, and it's going to be my response to that. Obviously, my new book, which is called I Don't Know, Maybe I Love You, is my first stab. But beginning in January of 2026, I'm going to be uh, beginning a year-long pilgrimage across the United States. I'm going to be walking from Los Angeles along historic Route 66, which is the 100th anniversary of that route.
Wow.
I'm going to be walking backwards from Los Angeles to Chicago to show that sometimes in order to know which way to walk forward, we have to look back and remember the lessons that we proclaim, the lessons that we were taught early in our country's founding. I often say we just have to remember the lessons we learned in kindergarten, really. To be kind, to respect, to listen to one another. And so I'm going to be, along with several other people, we're going to be walking from LA to Chicago. It's going to take between 10 and 12 months to do this, walking about 12 miles every day uh, to hopefully inspire people. See, this is what Francis would have done. Francis would have done something kind of crazy. It's called holy foolishness. And sometimes we need a holy fool to do something outrageous to grab our attention, to say, you know what, maybe I could look at that. Maybe there's another way to think about this. So I'm right now, I'm getting ready for that. I'm walking backwards every day, getting my muscles in shape and getting ready for the big cross country walk as I walk backwards the entire 2,400 miles.
Oh my goodness. Back to what you were talking about with people have kind of forgotten how to be kind to one another. Do you believe that's what's really helped cause the loneliness epidemic, not only in America, but also abroad? Just
Um,
the basic kindness and being able to honor somebody as a fractal of the divine?
yes, to put these simple things into practice, uh, to 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 be kind to one another, to visit one another, to really to live this, not just talk about it. We talking about spiritual values means nothing. We have to put them into practice, and number one in that list is to love one another no matter what. I don't love you because you agree with me. I love you because you're worthy of love. And that doesn't have anything to do with who you voted for or what you believe. We're all worthy of love and respect and kindness. And if I'm not willing to give that to you because I'm right and you're wrong, or whatever it may be, I'm the one that needs to look at that, not you. So yeah, I think that it's probably a big cause of loneliness and isolation. People just being afraid because the polarization has gotten to the point where it's pandemic, and we need to look at that as a country and as humanity, so we can get back to a place where we can love and honor each other, whether we agree or not.
What role does community play in a joyful life, and how can we find our tribe?
Community always plays a big role to be with people who are like-minded. So I actually founded a community in Mexico called Namaste Village. It's an interreligious, interfaith peace community where people from around the world come to live and to share. We have 40 houses or apartments, and I can tell you from direct experience that living in community is challenging. It'd be like having a big family, but it's also one of the most beautiful things we can do, to know that there are people looking out for me, who are there to support me, and we're there to support each other. So whether it be a church community, a social community, just a group of friends, uh, to be there for each other, but not to be exclusive. Not to say if you're in, you're in. If you're out, you're out. I think that's part of the polarization that we're seeing. As we need to honor everyone, and sometimes it's hard if someone believes something that's very contrary to my own heartfelt belief. But even then, the call is still to love, not to try and change, but to love everyone where they are, and then to wait for the miracle. The miracle will come if we can only do that.
Makes me think of the blue zones that researchers have found they're the healthiest and the longest lived people in the world in those blue zones, and community seems to be the one common denominator that they all share
Yeah,
is
I've heard
that
that.
part of the community. You've led millions in synchronized peace meditations. What do you believe happens energetically and spiritually when so many people focus their intention at the same time?
It's a very good question. Um, I can't say that I know what happens. I can only say that I know it works. My guess is that there is an energy. Um, hmm, it's funny. I've never had to explain this before in all of these decades of doing this work. There's an energy vortex. The more people that are focused together, especially in a positive way, it creates a vortex. It's the movement of energy, right? And when the movement of that positive energy gets to the point where it's stronger than the negative, then it just pulls it all in. And this is what I've seen happen many times when I've been to countries at war or conflict, and we've asked people to stop what they're doing at a certain time. And we don't say just pray, don't do a mental prayer. What we usually ask people to do is to feel as strong as you can emotionally that the prayer that you've been praying has already been answered, to pray that it's been a success. This is a very ancient mode of prayer, and it works. When we feel that that prayer has already been accomplished, it's like we're almost projecting into the future and making it so. So once again, I don't know how these things work, but I know that it does work. I've seen it happen so many times that you can't just say it's always a coincidence. It just seems to continue to happen time and time again.
Well, and that's what current day people call manifestation
Yes.
techniques, but it's ancient, to your
Yes.
point. And here's an interesting correlation for you, James, and that is in the healing work that I do, and I believe it's spirit that works through me and with me to help a person heal themselves. And I'm like a human MRI. I can see inside people's bodies and help facilitate healing. There are so many vortices that I see when somebody's dying. I see the spirit and the body separate. The spirit goes through a vortex. There are mathematical vortices that I see all the time. And so there's definitely something energetically and spiritual about all these vortices that are everywhere. It's an interesting vortex mathematics is a pretty new quantum physics field, and they're just really starting to dive into it, and it's fascinating. Yeah. Yeah, the other thing is, it's been my experience in doing this work for 30 years that all spirit communication is numbers. It's numerical, which will tie into your music,
Wow.
music is numeric too. It's a form of it. And so our brains translate, it's like we're decoding the numbers that are coming in spirit communication, and we decode it and it comes out in music or images or thoughts or sentences or whatever. But that seems to me to be the universal way that spirit communicates with us, and that's from a numerical standpoint.
That's really interesting. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me. It all comes down to the numbers.
Yeah. Yeah, and people who are good musicians a lot of the time are wonderful mathematicians as well.
Not this one.
Not that yeah, I understand.
But I'm one of these musicians. I don't read music. I really don't know anything about music. I just do it, and I've always done it. And for me, it's just an organic thing. I play guitar and I sing, and it just like ever since Father Vince taught me how to play guitar, that's just always been a part of my life.
Wonderful. What's a non-dual universe?
Well, the non-dual universe is what reality is. We live in a so-called dualistic universe, or what appears to be a dualistic universe, which is a me and thee. It's like there's two things going on here. There's someone interviewing me, and then there's me being interviewed. But in reality, when everything is brought down into its key component, there's only one thing that's going on here. We could call that God. We could call that love. It would be the same thing. Ultimately, everything reduces to love itself. There's a very simple thing that I always choose to do, and I'll have you do this, Julie. If you take your finger and you put it just about a foot in front of you, and you look straight at your finger, what you see is one finger, right? You see one. Now I want you to look through your finger to the other side of the room. How many fingers do you see now?
Yeah, a bunch.
Yeah.
A bunch.
I'm seeing two because I'm looking through it. But now if I bring my focus back to my finger, it comes back to one. There was never two fingers.
Right. I saw 2, and then I saw a bunch of them.
Yeah. Yes, the multiplying universe. Yeah,
Numbers. There's
so
those numbers and those vortices coming in again.
so yeah, the non-dual universe, we could just say is the universe that God knows and is calling us back to knowing.
And how does it live more productive, joyful lives when we think about the non-dual universe?
Well, I'm not in competition with you or anyone else to get what I want. My mind and my heart is more centered on service, on being of benefit to others rather than getting my own. It's the breakdown of this self with a small s and the uh, amplification of the self with a capital S, the true self. The small self, the ego self, who I think I am, is not who I really am. But I can't realize that until I get out of my own way, and realize, as the prayer of Saint Francis said, coming back to that, that it is in giving that I receive, it is in pardoning that I am pardoned, it is in loving that I am loved. That which I give to thee is received by me. There's only one of us here. And so I have to be willing to give that to others in order to know it and to have it myself.
Beautiful. What's the Moses Code?
Well, that's a big one. There's a whole book about
I
that.
know. Can you give us a few sentence synopsis?
Sure. Well, the Moses Code would definitely be my best known book. And there's also a movie people can see on YouTube called The Moses Code. But the Moses Code goes back to the story of Moses at the burning bush when he asked God, "What's your name?" Basically, who shall I say sent me? And God says in Hebrew, "Ehyeh Asher Ehyeh," which is often translated as "I am that I am." So the Moses Code is basically a way of claiming that. We talked about manifestation before. There are two types of manifestation. There's ego manifestation, or using spirit to get what I think I don't have, that if I only got, I'd be happier. That's the ego. And then there's soul manifestation, which is not trying to get as much as to give, right? To claim by giving. And when I say that I am that, whatever it is I think I need or want or don't, I am that already. It's the reality that is always true. And so the Moses Code book, it was all about how to bring us back from the ego's manifestation into soul manifestation so that we can be of service to others rather than always just trying to get what we think we need.
You wrote a book called The Barn Dance. Somewhere between heaven and earth, there's a place where the magic never ends. Could you tell us about that?
Oh, goodness. That's another big one. You might get more than you bargained for in this one. Almost 20 years ago, my wife was murdered. My former wife, Linda, was murdered. And so that was my healing journey, going through that experience. And it was a very magical experience. and of me healing through that. And the fact that it's in November, it will be 20 years since that happened. And it's one of those journeys that will always continue. The journey of grief is something that we're always working through. But when people ask me if I was only to read one of your books, which would it be? And I would say the best book I've written is The Barn Dance, because I had to go deepest to get it. It was something that I needed for my own healing. And I think that energy comes through in the book.
How do we keep faith alive when peace feels so far away at times?
By giving it away, it just have to be, yeah, be the source. Whatever it is that you think you need, be the source of that. There's a great prayer that Mother Teresa wrote based on the prayer of St. Francis, where she really amplifies this. And some of the words are, when I'm hungry, give me someone that I can feed. When I'm thirsty, give me someone to give a drink to. When I'm cold, give me someone to keep warm. And, it's hard to understand, because if I'm cold or if I'm hungry, but it shows a deep mystical truth that if I'm the source, I can't be the source of something unless I have that thing. So if I feel like I lack something, but I'm willing to give it away, I realize that it was always mine. So I think that's the key to life, is to be the source of that which you think you need.
Love that. From that fake prayer, who St. Francis
Yeah,
didn't even write. Look at
that's right.
he inspired that because look at all the
Oh,
mileage he's
I'm
gotten out
sure
of
he
it,
did.
even though
Absolutely. He may not have written it, but he inspired it.
absolutely. You say awareness without action's just wishful thinking. What's one step anybody can take today to embody peace?
Good question. I would say to find one person today that you can make happy. Someone that you can give something to them, even if it's a phone call or a kind word, someone that you know is in need, whether it's to be happy or whatever it is that they need. Be the source of that, like we were just saying. Find some way that you can be of service to that person. The more that we are in service to each other, the more this energy flows through our life, because then we are acting as the divine in the world, which is only giving. And the ego always wants to get, to take. But if we turn that around and become the source and just give what we think we want and need, we realize it was always ours.
That too. Couple more questions as we're winding down here. Do laughter, fun, and curiosity play a role in your mission?
My goodness, yes. Laughter, joy, and curiosity, you hit it right on the button. Those three things. One of the things that I always say in the need to depolarize is we have to be curious. Curiosity is a huge thing. If someone, like not long ago, my best friend, uh, it turned out she had a very different political opinion than I have. And I could have very easily followed the trend and said, "You're out of my life." But this was my best friend. And instead of doing that, I got curious. I said, "Tell me more. I would love to hear your perspective on that." And by the time we were done, neither one of us had changed the other, but there was deep respect. And then joy and laughter. Absolutely. Without that, what's the point? If this does not fill us with joy, if we're not able to laugh at ourselves and the silliness that we create, well, then I don't see the point. So laughter and joy and curiosity, I think, are three foundations that we should all live by.
Well, I think we come in that way. Babies are happy all the time unless
Yes.
they're hungry or they need to be changed or they're tired. That's our natural state. But we forget that. Wouldn't you agree? As we're
Amen.
as we're, taking ourselves so seriously, it's like, "Lighten up, Francis," speaking of Francis. Last question, James, why do we incarnate?
To learn to love, to learn to give, we have to remember that God is love, and therefore so am I, because we all come from the same source, and yet somehow we forgot. And the way to remember that is we incarnate, and then we go through whatever we go through in order to get back to the place that it is in giving that we receive. We're here to love one another, and in doing so, to open up that wellspring of love that we sometimes call God, that's within each one of us, that needs to be released so that our lives change, or we're lifted to a whole new perspective of reality, and humanity itself begins to realize its true purpose, which is love. It's just that simple.
You're extraordinary. Good heavens. What a delight to have this time to get to chat with you. Thank you for
I wish
making
I
this
could have done it in
work.
a more private place with less noise, but I'm just so happy that I could be here in Holland and still be able to join with you here.
Absolutely. The wonders of modern technology. I would love to come to one of your concerts. Are you going to be performing along your backwards trek from LA to
Oh yes,
Chicago?
the whole way. Where
Okay.
where where are you exactly?
I'm in Birmingham, Alabama, so it's not on the way from LA to Chicago, but
Yeah, you could come up to St. Louis or Chicago or
yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, that would be fun. I will look forward to doing that. And what we'll do is we'll follow that and we'll put that up on our social media to help you
Thank
promote
you.
it. Yeah, we'll do that too. Thank you for all the work that you're doing and helping the world and really distilling this somewhat seemingly complicated world into real basic tenets that we all can utilize and live by. So, my hat is off to you, sir. Thank
Thank
you
you,
for the
Julia.
work that you're doing. In the meantime, everybody, we're sending you lots of love from me here in Sweet Home, Alabama, mwah, and from The Hague, where James is. We'll see you next time. Bye, everybody.